Hey there, everyone. It is your good friend Eric. This is the Leading Edge Podcast. It is episode number 50. What? We made it to number 50. How cool is that? How fun is that? And thank you to all of you who have been so engaged with this podcast. I get really nice feedback about this podcast. And I so appreciate your support, your encouragement. It's been a blast to make this, and we're going to keep making it. It's not like this is the last one. It's episode number 50. It's called What is the World Coming to? And this podcast is inspired by all the things that we see happening in the world right now. And even though I just chuckled at it, I certainly don't want to make light of it. But it is quite certain that the world has been delivering some challenges to us, right? Some pretty intense things that we're seeing and feeling. And for sure, there's some people having a hard time interpreting all the things happening in the world right now. So that's why I'm making this, because I want to help out, right? I want to be helpful. And, whether it's what's happening with race relations, coronavirus, this is being recorded in June of 2020. And again, there's some pretty intense things going on right now. And let's just dive in. And what I'll tell you is that there are some effective ways to handle and interpret what's going on in the world right now. And there are some really ineffective ways to handle and interpret what's going on in the world right now. And I want to point out to the listeners some ways that might be ineffective. And I want to give you a very effective way to deal with what's happening in the world right now. And by the way, where this isn't going to go is the way to deal is to shut it off or tune it out or ignore or hide from it. No, not at all. I think it's really important that we look it in the eye, that we square up to it, that we attempt to understand it, that we look at what we're being taught, that we face it. Bottom line, we have to face it, because hiding from it, no matter what it is, that never works out, right? That never ever works out for the long term. So we have to square up to it. We have to participate, and we have to contribute, all right? Because it's one of my core beliefs is that ultimately this is all about contribution. So this is how can you contribute? And also, this is regardless of your position and where you stand and what you think about any of this or what your core beliefs are. It doesn't matter to me. I'm still going to give you a much more effective way to handle this so that you can make your contribution based on your beliefs and your values and in your position, okay? So here is what doesn't work. And I'll tell you why this doesn't work. But here's what doesn't work. What doesn't work is the title of this podcast, What's the World Coming to? And what I mean by that is that saying to yourself, if a person is saying to themselves over and over again, what's the world coming to? Oh my gosh, what's the world coming to? And it can be said in this very dramatic way. That does not work. And, I get and appreciate if we want to empathize with the world, and if it does concern us, and I get if it can't, I get that it is upsetting, that it can be upsetting. I totally get that, but it really is a matter of, are these feelings of upset and worry, concern, are they catalysts for you? Are they spurring you on to go then make a contribution in your way? Or is it just playing as a loop in your head over and over again? What's the world coming to? So when it plays over and over and over and over again, that's when it becomes kind of a victim-y thing, a dramatic thing, a place that's way ineffective, as opposed to a feeling of concern and causing you then to go take action, to go contribute in your way. Okay, so when I say this, the ineffective way is what's the world coming to played as a loop in your head. What I mean is it's when it's played over and over and over again, day after day after day after day, and you repeat it to yourself, and then you start to repeat it to others, and it comes out in all these ways that all that it's doing is just reinforcing your belief and your worry of what's the world coming to, okay? So there are two big reasons why this is ineffective. There are two. I'm going to give you two different explanations of this, and then I'm going to give you a much more effective way to handle what's going on right now, so that you can go make your contribution. Okay, let's talk about the first. I teach a lot about certainty. It's come up in this podcast. It's also a part of my Alpha State class. You've heard me talk about that. I do a daily mindset lesson for 20 minutes. People join a webinar either live or they listen to the recording. We talk about real life stuff. We handle like specific scenarios that the members are facing. We help people with their big goals. We're all about elevating performance. And one of the things, again, we talk about in Alpha State is certainty, all right, and the importance of certainty, and the fact that it is core need number one of every human being. So on the list of all the needs that a human being has, the need of certainty has to be met first, all right? And so when someone is playing as a loop in their head over and over again, what's the world coming to? Think about that question as it relates to certainty. What's the world coming to? There is no certainty in that question, and all that question is doing is reinforcing uncertainty, and it's causing us to look for uncertainty, right? Now our brain is like scanning for all the uncertainty in the world. Our brain is looking for evidence to reinforce the question, what's the world coming to? So that then our brain can say, see, I told you so. What's the world coming to? Look at all this upsetting news that's out there. What's the world coming to, right? So you see how that loop goes. So what happens is, and this is one of the core lessons that I teach, what happens is, in that situation, we end up like marinating our brain in uncertainty. We're just marinating it in this bath of uncertainty, this icky uncertainty, and this bath is called what's the world coming to? And that can only lead to one thing. It can only lead to a person feeling pretty much freaked out, all right? When someone is playing that as a loop over and over in their head, they will freak out. And that comes down to just like a basic psychology 101 lesson or principle, that when someone feels absolutely uncertain, when you remove all the certainty from a human being, they freak out. And I use the metaphor of getting dropped into a dark room. So imagine the scenario: you are immediately transported into a dark room, like just boom, all at once. You're inside a dark room, and it is dark. Like you can't see a thing. You have no clue where the walls are, no clue where the light switch is. And you reach your arms out, would be the first thing you would do to try to see if you could feel the walls. And if you can't feel anything, and right now you're imagining this, and I just want you to feel the discomfort there, right? Just feel that discomfort. If you were really to imagine if that happened to you, like dropped into a dark room, you can't see a thing. You have the sense you've never ever been in this room before. You don't have a clue where it is, how big it is. You don't have a clue where the walls are, where the light switch is. Put your arms out, you can't feel a thing. That is super uncomfortable, all right? And it's really upsetting. And you're in that scenario, a person eventually, if they couldn't find the walls, they will freak out. And saying to yourself over and over and over again, what's the world coming to? That's just like putting yourself in a dark room where you can't feel the walls and can't find the light switch. It's the same thing, and it's all about uncertainty, right? What's the world coming to? All it does is reinforce uncertainty. So that's number one, to make this point. Number two, to make this point, is a lesson that an amazing woman called Brooke Castillo teaches. I brought her up in podcasts before. You should check out her podcast, because she is an absolute genius, and she is a mindset coach. She teaches something called the model. All right, so the model is kind of at the foundation of her teachings, and one of the core principles of the model is that your thoughts create your feelings. And you think like, well, duh. And But that's really important. It's like an important that your thoughts create your feelings. So if you're feeling a certain way, it's because of how you're thinking. And so if you're feeling in a way that's not useful to you, that's harmful to you or ineffective to you and also to others, you have to trace it back to the thought then that is also not useful, not helpful, not adding value, quite the opposite, taking value away from you and then from others. So your thoughts create your feelings. So a thought is going to generate a feeling, which then leads to action. So your feelings are the fuel for action. And so you can think of it, run it forwards. I need to have a certain thought, then I'll have a feeling, and then I'll take an action. You can also run it backwards. What's the action that I'm taking or not taking? So then what's that feeling going on for me? So then now I'm going to trace it back to my thought. All right. You guys see how that goes? So check it out. If you're having the thought, what's the world coming to? What is the world coming to? Reinforced to you, played over and over in your head. What's the feeling that's going to get produced from that thought? Well, that feeling is worry. All right. The feeling is worry. And a platform of thought being what's the world coming to and feeling of worry, that platform is no place to operate from. That platform is one where it is impossible to make a contribution. How in the world are you going to make a contribution from that platform? So I use the metaphor of hiking. So I do a lot of hiking here in Colorado, and not like crazy. I'm not like doing crazy rock climbing, but I do hiking, and sometimes you have to scramble, which means you're using your hands to keep yourself stable. You're hiking over bigger rocks and boulders, and what's going on is you're looking for a stable spot to put your foot, right? You don't want to put your foot on a rock that's like teetering, that's not stable, because then you could fall and hurt yourself, right? So I think about that metaphor related to a platform to push from, to operate from. So the platform of what's the world coming to, producing a feeling of worry, that is totally unstable, right? So that's just like that rock that's teetering. If I try to put my foot on it, it's gonna, flip the other way, and I'm gonna trip and fall. Like, that's no way to push off from. So we need a much more stable platform to push from, so that we can go make a contribution. And my goodness, doesn't the world need us contributing right now? One thing we talk about in Alpha State is, imagine if 100% of the people on planet Earth were 100% focused on contribution. I think we'd all be good. I think we'd all be in a really great place. I think we'd all be like hunky-dory, right? Those challenges would still be there, but we'd all be just kind of moving forward together and figuring this out and making our best contribution. All right, that'd be cool. And so because that'd be cool, it's got to start with us, right? So it's got to start with us having in our own head and in our own heart a really strong place to push from, to operate from. We need a great platform to make our own personal contribution, again, regardless of where you stand. All right, so this is not about a position or me directing you a certain way. This is about you making your best contribution in your way, based on your beliefs and your values, so that we can all be better. Okay, so after saying all that, I want to give you a much more effective platform to push from. I want to give you an effective way to handle and face what's going on in the world right now, so that you can make your best contribution. So let's go back to the title of the podcast, and let's go back to what doesn't work. What's the world coming to? What if we replace that with, what if that question, that sentence in our head is replaced with, I'm doing my part. I am doing my part. So what if, as a person looked at the news, looked at what's going on in the world, looked at their Facebook, looked at society in general, took a look at what's happening, and then did a check-in with what they believe and their values, and said to themselves, you know what? I'm doing my part. I am doing my part. And isn't that way better than what's the world coming to? Here's why I really like I'm doing my part. First, I Let's start with the first word in that sentence, which is I. It's personal. It's personal responsibility. So you're shifting it from all these things outside of you to you yourself. It's I. So you're taking some ownership of it. So it's personal. And then the next two words are am doing. I am doing. And doing, what I love about doing is that it's active, right? Like, so by definition, the word doing is active because doing is doing. So I am doing. So that flips you in this passive, just receiving mode. I'm just receiving all this information, and oh my gosh, it's just too much, and it's overwhelming, and all this is coming into me to no, I am doing. So it flips it around, and now you're taking action, you're stepping into it, you're facing it, you are doing. And what are you doing? You're doing my part. So the last two words are beautiful because it puts it into what you are in control of. Because one of the problems with what's the world coming to is you're just totally focused on everything that's out of your control. All right. So it puts you into this feeling of not only worry, but gosh, I have no control. So what's beautiful about I'm doing my part, the my part is totally focused on you and what you can do, what you're able to do so that you can make your best contribution. It's all about what you're in control of. So it's kind of acknowledging that there's a whole lot that you're not in control of, but it's also acknowledging that there are some things that you are in control of. I am doing my part. So what is your part? What is your part? What is your part to play in this? What is your contribution for you to make based on what's happening right now? And go do that. All right. So I want you to go do your part. And I want you to say, you know what, I'm doing my part. And going back to the model, Brooke Castillo's model. Now let's put that sentence now into the model. Instead of the thought being, what's the world coming to? The thought is now I'm doing my part. What feeling does that generate? What is the feeling? And there's some really cool feelings that are produced from that thought. Number one is control. I now feel in control. And isn't that nice? Isn't that a nice thing based on what's happening in the world right now? Isn't that a nice thing to get some control? And also the feeling that is produced is pride, because you're taking an active role and you are doing your part. So that's a feeling of pride. So imagine the actions now that you can take from a feeling of control and a feeling of pride. Are you kidding me? Might you be able to do some really cool things from a feeling of control and pride as opposed to feelings of worry and no control? When your feelings are worry and no control, what are the actions you're going to take? Well, probably it's going to be nothing. Probably it's going to be hide, withdraw, fret, complain. Those are not contributions. Those are not contributions. However, when you can generate a feeling of control and a feeling of pride, oh my goodness, you're going to contribute. So again, what I want you to do is to replace your thought of what's the world coming to, shift it to I'm doing my part, get those feelings of control and pride produced, and then the actions that you're going to take, or what I want you to do, go make your contribution. Go make it. Go contribute in the way that you think is appropriate or right, and however you want to do it that lines up with your values. Just make sure it's good for everyone is all I would ask. And of course, you're going to do that because you're a part of this. You're listening to this podcast. You're not going to make it just about you. You're going to make it about, all right, what's my best contribution for everyone? Go do that. And we're all going to be better off. All right, guys, that is episode number 50. You've heard me talk about Alpha State. If you want to know more about that, reach out. You know how to hit me up. You can find me on Facebook. You may have my email too, but you can find me on Facebook. Send me a message. I'll send you more info about Alpha State. It's pretty cool. We have a lot of fun in there. We make a huge impact. I get amazing feedback. People are having some big time transformations and feeling a whole lot different about themselves, about everything. So hit me up if you want to know more about that. In the meantime, enjoy life on the leading edge.